First News with Keeler in the morning on WIBX and WIBX950.com.
Swimsuit? Check. Sunscreen? Check. Phone charger? Check. Don't forget to pack the 5-Hour Energy. It fits great in a pocket or carry-on, and the alert feeling will help you arrive ready for anything. Now get 20% off when you use code 5HETRAVEL at 5hourenergy.com. Expires April 30th. One-time use only. Not valid with other discounts. Remember, visit 5hourenergy.com and use code 5HETRAVEL to save 20%.
I do recall back a while after the election had ended, that wasn't that long ago, it took us quite a while to figure out who won the congressional race. I do recall Anthony Brindisi saying something, I don't think I'll quote you exactly what you had told me, but pretty close, saying, this isn't for me. I don't know that I can go back. That is what you said, and now you made that official as of yesterday.
I think they're still counting votes in Shenango County right now. They just found 10 more in a drawer somewhere.
Oh, Lord. What craziness, right?
You're right, Bill. The last, really 4 years, because you had a run for Congress, it seems like, for a year and a half before you actually serve in Congress for 2 years. And it takes its toll. It really does. Going back and forth to Washington, you're there. The schedule is you're there 3 weeks out of every month, Monday through Thursday. You're flying back and forth. And even when you're home, you're not really home because you're driving to Binghamton or you're driving to Madison County or wherever to go to some event. So it is rough on the family, and that's really ultimately what drove my decision to not seek another term because of the strain that it would put on the family. And look, this year I was at every single one of my daughter's softball games. They had their championship game last night. Unfortunately, they didn't win. They went into extra innings and lost by a run. But I would have been in Washington yesterday not seeing that, and I'm glad I got to be there to experience it for her and for me. Yeah.
I would ask you in the midst of this current political climate, like you've heard stories of what Sherry Bollert went through, and we witnessed what Richard Hanna went through. But you went through the most tumultuous time in our modern history. Yeah. There's a lot of hate out there, and you're either with us or you are the absolute enemy.
You're the enemy,
and that's got to be a little tough to
that takes its toll too. It really does, and I think things have only gotten worse since I left a few months ago. That's one of the sad things about this country, and I think it discourages a lot of good people from going into office because they sit back and ask, why would I subject myself to this kind of aggravation? When I was there, I tried to concentrate on getting legislation passed, getting things done, doing my work for the district, not trying to become a national celebrity, didn't care about the number of Twitter followers I had. But it seems like politicians today are judged more by a soundbite or what clip they can get onto YouTube or Twitter or whatever, as opposed to how many bills they get passed. Yeah. Look, there's you have people on the left and the right, on the extremes, who don't pass any legislation whatsoever. But they are the most famous politicians in all of this country. Right. It makes no sense. I authored 12 bills that got signed into law by President Trump when I was there, which is an accomplishment not only for a freshman legislator, but for anyone in Congress, and doesn't get any attention whatsoever. But the people who speak the loudest, who say the most controversial things, and have the most extreme opinions are the ones who get all the attention, and that's what people think are driving both parties. It's really the extremes on both parties that are ruining the middle of this country.
That's a great quote.
I'll use it is. And the line that Bill had said, although I think you said you were paraphrasing, was this isn't for me. It's kind of a sad state when who named you the most bipartisan member of Congress?
The Chamber of Commerce.
The most bipartisan member of Congress goes, Congress, this atmosphere and everything, this really isn't going to work out. Yeah. And it's sad.
Well, look, even if you're a young person coming out of college, you have some interest in public service, but you decide, look, I can go make more money doing XYZ as opposed to going to Congress, where you're literally a target all the time. And if you're not, if you're not left enough, you're attacked from your left. If you're not right enough, you're attacked from your right. You get attacked by the other side, and it's gotten to the point where we can't even disagree with each other respectfully. We have to resort to violence now because you're the enemy. When I don't know when we as Americans started labeling each other as the enemy. The enemy is Russia. The enemy is China. The enemy is Iran. Right. Those are our enemies, not our fellow Americans.
Somehow, I mean, we all witnessed January 6th.
Right.
What happened? I mean, how has it gotten this bad?
Right.
That something like that could happen in this country.
Right. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think that is something that we really have to sit back and examine. And I always say that we have to remember that we're all Americans first.
Yeah.
Try to look back at how we came together after 9/11. It was us coming together as a country to going after the worst terrorist attack in our nation. And we have to somehow remember that and get back to a point where we can respect each other. It's okay to have different opinions.
Right.
You don't have to hate each other just because someone has a different opinion than you. Talk about it and agree to disagree. We just can't get to that right now.
Were you backdoor deals? You hear all about the backdoor deals, and people know because they were there when you made your decision, whether it was to vote for impeachment or whatever. People know because they were there with you when you made that decision. I'm being sarcastic when I say that, but I've heard it all. And Nancy Pelosi said you had no choice; you had to vote that way.
It's absolutely not true. I would tell you right now, if I had any pressure whatsoever when I was there, I would tell you. I have nothing to hide about that. I think the only time I ever got pressure was on a bill, and it was from another member from within the New York delegation who came over and said, Brindisi, why aren't you got to vote for this? I'm like, I'm not voting for this. This is bad for my district. I'm not voting for it. And that was early on when I was there, and I think it was maybe to test me to see if I would cave into some kind of pressure, and I didn't cave into pressure. And then after that, people knew I was going to be I wasn't going to be there with the party on a lot of votes.
Yeah.
But I can't. I never was pulled aside by Pelosi or anyone in leadership saying you need to vote this way.
Never given. This is the other one that I hear. You were given armed services because you voted a certain way.
No, I was given armed services because I had put in for armed services initially. But the class that I came in with was a pretty impressive class of freshmen who had military backgrounds. I don't have a military background. I have a district where military installations are very important to our economy here,
right.
And that's why I wanted to be on armed services. But I had some stiff competition from other members in the freshman class, and it was told to me that if there is an opening during the time that you're here, that you would be the next person on the Armed Services Committee. And unfortunately, we had a situation where a member in California resigned for personal reasons, and that created an opening on the Armed Services Committee. And that's why, look, I didn't go on the Armed Services Committee for my own prestige. I went on because of Rome and because of the Air Force Research Labs and because of DFAS. I wanted to have a position on that committee to stop any threat to those installations because they employ thousands of people in this community. So that's why I wanted to be there.
So just this last line of questioning where I've gone, it's all the things that we've heard, all the things that people have said. Doesn't that just piss you off? I mean, I don't mean to say it that way. I'm sorry I said it that way.
No, it makes me shake my head because people believe it. If you type it on the internet, people believe it.
And what is this specifically?
What?
Well, you said when people believe it. Is there specifically a rumor or something where?
No, I just think that the last. I mean, he voted a certain way. Pelosi made you do this.
Right.
They gave you armed services because you voted for impeachment.
Right.
I will tell you that, and I hope I'm not giving something that I shouldn't, because we get a tip. I learn something. We'll keep it quiet if it has to be kept quiet until you're out now. So I knew you were going to vote the way you voted on impeachment. When you did, I knew beforehand, just before, and I said to you, I don't know that I would do that. I think that's going to hurt you in the long run, and I think it probably did.
Yeah.
But your answer to me was, when this is all said and done, I have to look myself in the mirror. Talk about that.
Well, that was my decision. I felt that what the president did, and look, I worked with the president on a number of issues. I had 12 bills that were signed into law by him, so we worked together. I was at the White House often on different issues, but on that particular issue, I felt what he did was wrong. It was inappropriate to
whatever the issue was back then. That was
to reach out to a foreign power to
Yeah.
interfere in an election. I felt that was inappropriate. Whether it was a Democrat doing it or a Republican doing it, I think it was wrong.
Yeah.
And I felt the evidence was there to pursue a trial. People forget. I always said during that process, the role of the House and my role is like a grand juror. Okay. Many people have served on grand juries. You evaluate the evidence and you determine whether or not there's enough evidence to move forward with a trial. Not whether he's guilty or not guilty, just if there's enough evidence to move forward with a trial. I felt that there was enough evidence to move forward with a trial. The Senate held a trial. The Senate acquitted the president, and and the world moves on. The country moves on. Yeah. That's all it came down to.
We've done this whole thing without the mention at all of the current congresswoman, who, by the way, you two battled. Would have been 3 times you were battling it out. With this last time, under how many votes? What was it?
109 votes.
109 votes between the two of them. We haven't mentioned her. Anything you want to leave with, or?
No, I wish her very well. I hope that she does a good job for this district. This is my home, so she's my representative, and I hope she does a good job for this region. I'm sure there's going to be a very spirited contest in a year from now between her and whatever Democrat emerges from the process. The district's going to look a lot different than it does right now. People have to realize that the current boundaries of New York 22 are going to be a lot different than what they look like today. Mm-hmm. And we may get put into a seat in Syracuse.
There's a good chance she could be facing Katko.
Could be facing Katko. Could be facing Stefanik. Ithaca and Tompkins County could get lumped into the district because Tom Reed is retiring, and that seat may get merged into this one. So there's a lot of variables at play in 2022, and we don't even know who's going to be on the ballot.
Right. And finally, I know Jeff has, but I'm hogging this. I apologize.
It's okay.
Finally, at least for my questioning, at what point did you look in the mirror and say, I have a law firm in the family. I can do this, or I can go back and do that. At what point did you make that decision?
Well, at some point after the 3 months of counting in the lawsuit and the post-election fiasco and all the inconsistencies that happened, there came a point when the judge finally ruled for the counties to certify the election, and we had a choice at that point. We could have appealed it to the appellate division, which is the second highest level court in New York State, or I could have appealed it to the House of Representatives because ultimately they make the say in who sits as a member of the House. And I thought long and hard about it over that weekend, and ultimately came to the conclusion. I was looking at my wife, I think it was like Monday morning, we looked at each other and said, okay, let's say that we appeal it and we win. What do we get? We get to go back to Congress. And I don't know if that's really where we want to go right now, given all that's happening in the country and what's happened over the last couple of years.
All right.
That's so interesting, the way you describe that, and that when we win, do we win?
Exactly. But what do you win?
It's interesting. So you've decided this isn't for you, and it won't be like a 20-year stay in Washington or a member of Congress. But maybe they talk about the founding fathers that said you have a business, or you are whatever you are in society, and you take a term, you take some time out, you serve your country,
right,
and then you go back to what you were doing. And maybe that's what happens here.
I think so. Look, what I said was I'm giving up on congressional service, but I'm not giving up on public service. I love this community. I spent 2 years on the school board. I spent 7 years in the state assembly. Utica is my home. This region is my home. I love it here. I do think at some point in time I will run for something else down the road, but I want to make sure that it's a position where I can come home every night and sleep in my own bed and see my children. So I'm not ruling out future runs at local elected positions because I do love public service and I still do want to give back. And I'm only 42, so I think I have some time.
Once a congressman, always a congressman.
That's right.
So, Congressman, thank you for your service.
Thank you very much.
Well,
I
and
appreciate
clearly
it.
there was truth. You got the broom closet office when you didn't vote for Nancy. Come on, give us that one. Come on.
I had a very nice office in the Cannon office building.
Okay. Congressman,
in the
thank
closet.
you.
No, I'm just kidding.
Thank you so much. We
Thank you,
appreciate
guys.
it.